Remember, I'm just a boat bum. I'm not a boat mechanic and I don't play one on television. My advice is based on 40 years of working on and around boats. If you decide to take my advice, that's your decision. Thanks. One of the important differences between a home air conditioning unit and an installed marine air conditioning unit is the cooling water system. Now, the cooling water system provides a way to take water out of the river, lake, sea, whatever you've got, and pass it through a heat exchanger on the air conditioning unit, which passes across the refrigerant and takes the heat out of the system and passes it into the off the boat. This particular simple system consists of about 5 parts: a seacock with a through hull, a strainer, a pump, the air conditioning unit itself, and then another through hull where the water is discharged out. So let's take a look at these 5 parts and see how they work together and what we need to do to keep the system functioning correctly. The first part is the seacock. Now, the seacock is attached to a through hull, and the through hull that it needs to be as far below the water line as possible in order to keep water in the system when you're working on the strainer. The important thing to remember about seacocks is that when the valve is in line with the valve handle is in line with the valve, then the valve is open. If it's across the valve at right angles, it's closed. Next, we get to the strainer. Now, the strainer's job is to prevent material in the water outside the boat from getting in and blocking the tight passages within the rest of the system. It's designed to handle leaves, twigs, fish, clams, anything that might get in through the first through hull. The most important thing to remember about it is that you need to clean it on a regular basis. What do I consider regular? About once every 2 weeks in most situations should be fine. Although in the summertime here, when it gets warm, there's a lot more biological growth, and I like to go to about once a week. In order to clean it, you have to take the top off. Now, the top very clearly says hand tighten only. But it's going to happen occasionally that the system is going to get very tight. And if that happens, you need to use what's called a pin spanner to get the top off. A pin spanner has literally 2 pins and an adjustable arm. And we take the 2 pins, put it into any of the 3 holes on the top of the strainer and use it to turn the strainer open. Once you get it open, you don't want to use that pin spanner to close it again. If you have to use a pin spanner to get it tight, then you should be replacing the O-ring at the top of the strainer. Now, the strainer basket itself can be made of either plastic or metal. In order to clean this basket, doesn't require a lot of high-tech tools. This is an old sugar basket or sugar container, and in it I keep some baby bottle brushes, a dish scrubber, and a toothbrush. Now, the most important thing is that when you clean this, this is going to be covered with really nasty material. It's going to smell bad. You don't want to try and clean this on your boat. Take it out to the dock and clean it with a water hose on the dock. Now, because of that, you want to make sure that you can't drop it. So I like to tie a piece of cord to the basket and put it around my wrist. That way, even if the water hose pushes it out of my hand, I'm not going to lose it in the river. Once I've got the strainer basket, I'll hose it down real good and then use the scrub brush to clean it up. The other thing you can do to help keep down biological growth is go to your local pool supply store and get some chlorine tablets. Put the chlorine tablets in the basket after you've cleaned it, and that way it will chlorinate the system for a couple of days as those tablets disappear. It's a good practice to allow the system to keep any biological growth that's gotten past the strainer under control. Now you'll notice that I have in my collection a spare strainer basket. I like to keep 2 strainer baskets, one in the cleaning materials and one in the strainer, so that I don't have to pull the strainer basket out, run out, clean it, and try and put it back in. I can pull one out, put the clean one in, and then let the one that I just removed sit for a while, let that material dry out. It makes it easier to clean. All right, next thing we need to look at is the pump. Now, this is a Dometic pump made by the same company that made the air conditioning unit, and it runs at about 500 gallons per hour. This one is water cooled, which means that it actually has a set of tubes that run off of the pump and run through a set of tubes within the electrical portion to keep it cool. Now, that's a very good thing. It allows the pump to run more effectively, but you have to be very careful that when you winterize this system, you make sure that you get antifreeze or through the entire system or dry it out completely. You'll notice that this particular pump has a crack on the side. That's because it wasn't winterized appropriately. The other thing about this is that this particular pump has a has a rotor inside. Now, over time, biological material that's passed through the strainer can get it up inside there and can make that pump run less efficiently. So about once a year, you want to take the cover off and clean that pump out really good. Now, in order to clean it, all you need to do is pull it out. This magnet here works with an electromagnet inside the system to make the pump work, so the system itself is completely watertight. After we go through the pump, we get to the heat exchanger itself, and the only thing we really need to do with the heat exchanger is make sure that on a regular basis we flush the system out. Now, the way I like to do this was a very simple system, but I like to add a T in between the strainer and the pump that allows me to attach a garden hose from the dock to the system. Now, by pushing a lot of water through there and controlling how the valves are lined up, I can either flush water back through the strainer basket and through the inlet seacock and through hull and flush anything that's gotten up inside there back over the side, or by changing it around, I can flush water at a high rate of speed through the pump and through the heat exchanger and out through the side. Both of those areas need to be flushed out on a regular basis. I like to do it about once a month. If you don't have a T already installed, I recommend looking at it. The best thing you can do is have some way that if anything gets caught in the system, you can blow it back out. All right, so the important things that we have in this system are the strainer, the seacock, and the pump. And a most important thing to do is to keep the system clear of obstructions. Most times that you have a problem with your marine air conditioning unit, it's in the cooling water system. Keep that flowing and you'll keep the cold going. Thanks.